8-year-old Ethan Cole pressed his small hand against the cool glass of the observation window. Outside, stars drifted past in an endless river of light. The view never changed much, but Ethan didn't mind. At least here, in the quiet observation garden of Harmony Point Station, no one stared at him. No one whispered. No one looked away with uncomfortable expressions. His hoverchair hummed beneath him, a soft mechanical purr that had become as familiar as his own breathing. The chair was sleek in silver, hovering a few inches off the ground. It responded to the slightest touch of his fingers on the control panel built into the armrest. Forward, backward, left, right. It gave him freedom to move through the massive space station, even though his legs couldn't carry him. Ethan's legs rested motionless under a blue blanket his mother had made. They had never worked, not since the day he was born. The doctors on Earth had tried everything they knew. The doctors here on Harmony Point had tried too, using alien medicine and advanced technology from a dozen different worlds. Nothing helped. The paralysis was permanent. He had stopped asking if it would ever get better. He had stopped hoping for a miracle. Now, at 8 years old, Ethan just wanted one thing that seemed almost as impossible as walking. He wanted a friend. The observation garden stretched out behind him, a long curved corridor that wrapped around the outer ring of the station. Enormous windows lined one wall, offering a view of deep space. Along the other wall, plants from different worlds grew in careful rows. There were purple ferns from Zenther Prime that glowed faintly in the dim light. There were thick vines from Malvec that smelled like cinnamon. There were even a few plants from Earth. Roses, ferns, a small lemon tree that his mother had helped plant. Most children on the station never came here. They preferred the recreation zones, the anti-gravity playrooms, the holosuite chambers where they could run and jump and play games. The observation garden was too quiet, too calm. It was a place for adults who wanted to think, or for people who had nowhere else to go. People like Ethan. He pulled his electronic drawing pad from the side compartment of his chair and powered it on. The screen glowed softly, showing his latest sketch. It was a dragon, a massive creature with wings spread wide, scales gleaming like armor, fire billowing from its open jaws. Ethan had drawn hundreds of dragons over the past few months. Red dragons, green dragons, golden dragons that shimmered in sunlight. Dragons from the old Earth stories his father read to him at night. Earth dragons weren't real, of course. They had never been real. But the station was home to the Drachnori, an alien species that looked remarkably similar to the mythical creatures. Ethan had seen them walking through the corridors, towering beings with scales and wings and long tails. They were warriors and explorers, proud and strong. They moved with confidence, their voices deep and commanding. Ethan wondered what it would be like to be that strong, that free. He added shading to his dragon's wings, using his finger to blend the colors on the screen. Drawing helped pass the time. It made him feel less alone, even though he was creating the pictures by himself. In his drawings, dragons could go anywhere. They could fly through clouds, dive into oceans, climb the highest mountains. They were never stuck in one place. They were never limited by bodies that didn't work the way they should. Ethan, dinner's ready? The voice crackled through the small communicator clipped to his chair. It was his mother, Grace Cole. She worked in the station's engineering bay with his father, Philip. They both had long shifts, sometimes 12 or 14 hours. They were helping maintain the massive engines that kept Harmony Point moving through space, away from Earth and toward new colonies and distant star systems. Ethan tapped the communicator. Coming, Mom. He saved his drawing and tucked the pad away. With a gentle push on the controls, his chair turned and glided toward the corridor exit. The movement was smooth and silent. He had been using the chair for so long that it felt like part of him now. An extension of his body. A way to be mobile in a universe designed for people who could walk. As he floated through the corridors, Ethan passed other families. A group of Zenthari children ran past, their crystalline skin reflecting the corridor lights in rainbow patterns. They were laughing, chasing each other in some kind of game. One of them glanced at Ethan as they passed. For a moment their eyes met. Then the Zenthari child looked away and kept running. Ethan was used to it. A Malvec family walked by next, their thick fur covered in decorative beads. The parents nodded politely to Ethan, but their child, a small furry creature about Ethan's age, hid behind its mother's leg, peeking out with wide eyes. Ethan heard the child whisper something in the Malvec language. He didn't understand the words, but he recognized the tone. Curiosity mixed with fear. By the time he reached his family's quarters, Ethan's mood had sunk even lower. He tried not to let it show as the door slid open and he entered the small living space his family called home. There's my boy. His father, Philip, stood at the food synthesizer pulling out steaming plates. He was a tall man with kind eyes and grease-stained work clothes. "I made your favorite, spaghetti and meatballs." "Well, the synthesizer made it, but I pushed the buttons." Ethan managed a small smile. "Thanks, Dad." His mother emerged from the bedroom, still wearing her engineering uniform. Grace had dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and a warm smile that made Ethan feel safe. She kissed the top of his head as he floated his chair up to the table. "How was your day, sweetie?" she asked, sitting down across from him. "Fine," Ethan said automatically. His parents exchanged a look. They did that a lot lately. Those worried glances that parents make when they think their child isn't watching. "Did you go to the youth center today?" Philip asked, trying to sound casual. "No, Ethan." Grace's voice was gentle but concerned. "You have to try, honey. There are lots of kids your age on the station. I'm sure if you just—" "They don't want to play with me, Mom." Ethan kept his eyes on his plate. "I tried before, remember? They all just stared." "Maybe we could talk to some of the parents," Philip suggested. "Help them understand that you're just like any other kid. That the chair doesn't." "It's okay, Dad." Ethan forced a smile. "I don't mind being alone." "Really?" But that was a lie and they all knew it. They ate dinner quietly. His parents talked about work, about the new engine calibrations, about station gossip. Ethan half listened, pushing meatballs around his plate. When dinner ended, he helped clear the table. His chair had extendable arms that could reach and carry things, then retreated to his small bedroom. The room was barely big enough for a bed, a desk, and some storage. Posters of Earth covered the walls. Pictures of mountains and oceans and forests. Places Ethan had never seen in person but dreamed about visiting someday. On his desk sat models of spaceships his father had helped him build. In the corner, a small shelf held books, real paper books from Earth, not electronic ones. Stories about adventures, heroes, and dragons. Ethan changed into his sleep clothes and transferred from his chair to his bed. It was a practiced movement, something he had done thousands of times. He lay back against the pillows and stared at the ceiling. Through the thin walls he could hear other families. Alien voices speaking in languages he didn't understand. Laughter. The sounds of people who belonged, who had friends and community. Ethan closed his eyes and thought about his dragon drawings. About creatures that could fly away whenever they wanted. About being strong enough that no one would ever avoid you or whisper about you or treat you like something fragile that might break. Tomorrow he decided he would go back to the observation garden. He would sit by the windows and draw more dragons and pretend that the loneliness didn't hurt. It was the only plan he had. The next morning, Ethan returned to the observation garden earlier than usual. His parents had already left for their shift in the engineering bay, and the automated systems had woken him, prepared his breakfast, and helped him get ready for the day. The station's AI was efficient, but it wasn't company. He positioned his hover chair by his favorite window, the one that looked out toward a distant nebula. The clouds of gas and dust glowed purple and blue, lit by stars being born inside them. Ethan pulled out his drawing pad and started sketching a new dragon, this one with wings that matched the colors of the nebula. The garden was completely empty. It usually was at this hour. Most families were eating breakfast together or getting ready for school programs. Ethan preferred it this way, quiet, peaceful, alone with his thoughts and his art. He had been drawing for about 20 minutes when he heard a sound. It was soft at first, almost like wind chimes. Then it became clearer, footsteps. Not the heavy boots of adult Draknori or the soft pads of Malvek feet. These were light, careful steps. Claws clicking gently on the metal floor. Ethan looked up from his drawing pad. Standing at the entrance to the observation garden was a Draknori child. She was small, much smaller than any Draknori Ethan had ever seen. Where the adult Draknori on the station stood nearly 8 feet tall with massive wings and thick armored scales, this young one was barely 4 feet high. Her scales were a bright copper color, catching the light from the stars outside and shimmering like polished metal. 2 small horns curved back from her head, no longer than Ethan's fingers. Her eyes were large and golden, with vertical pupils that reminded Ethan of cats from Earth. But what struck Ethan most were her wings. They were folded against her back, delicate and almost translucent. The membranes between the wing bones were so thin that light passed through them, creating patterns of shadow and copper light. They looked fragile, like they might tear if she moved too quickly. And they were small, far too small, Ethan thought, to lift her into the air. The young Draknori stood at the entrance, looking around the garden as if she had never been here before. Her head tilted to one side, studying the plants, the windows, the stars beyond. Then her golden eyes found Ethan. For a long moment they just stared at each other. Ethan waited for her to turn away. That's what everyone else did. They looked at him, saw the hover chair, saw his motionless legs, and then found somewhere else to be. He had learned not to take it personally. It still hurt, but he had learned. But this Draknori child didn't turn away. Instead, she walked toward him. Her clawed feet clicked softly with each step. She moved with careful grace, her tail swishing behind her for balance. As she got closer, Ethan could see more details. The individual scales on her snout, the way her nostrils flared slightly as she breathed, the curious intelligence in those golden eyes. She stopped right beside his hover chair and looked down at him. "Hello," she said. Her voice was high and musical, with a slight hissing quality on certain sounds. "Why are you here all alone?" Ethan blinked, surprised that she had spoken to him at all. I like it here. It's quiet." The young Draknori tilted her head the other way, studying him with intense curiosity. "Don't you have friends to play with?" The question was so direct, so innocent, that Ethan didn't know how to answer at first. Finally he said quietly, "No. I don't have any friends." "Why not?" Ethan gestured to his chair, to his legs covered by the blanket. "Because I'm different. My legs don't work. I can't run or jump or climb like other kids. So nobody wants to play with me." The Draknori child looked at his chair with great interest, walking around it slowly. She examined the hovering mechanism, the control panel, the storage compartments on the sides. Then she looked at his legs, then back up at his face. "What's your name?" she asked. "Ethan. Ethan Cole." "Ethan," she repeated, testing the word. The way she pronounced it had a slight hiss at the end. "Ethan's." Then she sat down on the floor right beside his chair, folding her small wings carefully against her back. "My name is Ember. Ember of the Flame Wing clan." "That's a nice name," Ethan said, not sure what else to say. Ember looked out at the stars through the window. "I come from Draknoris Prime. Do you know it?" Ethan shook his head. "I've heard of it, but I've never been there. I've only been to Earth and this station." "Draknoris Prime has 3 suns," Ember said, her eyes distant with memory. "The skies are always bright and the mountains are so tall they touch the clouds. My family lived in a nest city built into the highest peaks. Every morning, the adult Draknori would launch from the cliffs and soar through the valleys." She paused, her voice becoming softer. "It was beautiful." "Why did you leave?" Ethan asked. "My father is Commander Rinash. He was assigned to Harmony Point Station to lead the Draknori security forces. So my family came with him, my father, my mother Scylla, and me." Ember traced a claw along the floor, drawing invisible patterns. "I miss home. I miss Earth sometimes too," Ethan admitted. "Even though I don't remember it very well. We left when I was really young." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the nebula glow in the distance. Then Ember said something that surprised Ethan. "My wings don't work yet." Ethan looked at the delicate copper wings folded against her back. "What do you mean?" "I can't fly," Ember explained. She stretched one wing out, showing him. The membrane was thin and delicate, the bones underneath visible as dark lines. "All the other hatchlings my age can already glide. Some can even fly for short distances. But my wings are too small, too weak. When I try to fly, I just fall." She folded her wing back against her body, and Ethan saw something in her golden eyes that he recognized immediately. Sadness. Loneliness. The feeling of being different from everyone else. "My parents worry about me," Ember continued. "Draknori are supposed to be strong. Warriors. Hunters. Flyers. But I can't do the most basic thing a Draknori should do. I can't soar." She looked at Ethan. "So I understand what it's like to be different. To have something that doesn't work the way it should." Ethan felt something shift inside his chest. For months, he had felt completely alone in his struggle. He had thought no one could possibly understand what it was like to be unable to do the things everyone else did naturally. But here was Ember, a proud Draknori from a species of powerful flyers, and she couldn't fly. "We're both stuck on the ground," Ethan said softly. "Yes," Ember agreed. Then she smiled, a strange expression on a dragon's face showing small sharp teeth. "We're both waiting to soar." For the first time in months, Ethan smiled back. It was a real smile, not the forced ones he gave his parents. This was genuine, coming from a place of understanding and connection. "Can I see what you're drawing?" Ember asked, noticing the pad in his lap. Ethan hesitated for just a moment, then turned the screen so she could see. Ember's golden eyes went wide with wonder. "You draw dragons?" she exclaimed. "Yeah. They're from Earth mythology. They're not real, but the stories say they were huge and powerful and could breathe fire and fly anywhere they wanted. They look like my people." Ember leaned closer, her snout almost touching the screen. She studied the dragon Ethan had drawn, the massive wings, the armored scales, the flames. But bigger. Much bigger. And look at those wings. Are all Earth dragons supposed to have wings like that? In most stories, yes. Big wings that can carry them across oceans and over mountains. Ember sat back looking thoughtful. I wish my wings were that big. I think your wings are beautiful, Ethan said honestly. Even if they can't fly yet. Ember's scales seemed to brighten slightly, and Ethan realized she was pleased by the compliment. Thank you, Ethan SSS. Can you show me more drawings? Ethan scrolled through his collection, showing her dragon after dragon. Ember commented on each one, asking questions about Earth mythology, about the stories behind the creatures. She was genuinely interested, not just being polite. Ethan found himself talking more than he had in weeks, explaining the tales his father had read to him, describing the differences between European dragons and Asian dragons, between fire breathers and ice breathers. Time passed without either of them noticing. The nebula outside shifted position as the station rotated. Other people walked past the observation garden, glancing in but not entering. Finally, Ember stood up and stretched her wings. I should go. My mother will wonder where I am. Ethan felt a sudden panic. Will you come back? Ember looked at him with those golden eyes, and her expression was warm. Of course I'll come back. We're friends now, aren't we? Friends? Ethan repeated the word like he wasn't sure what it meant anymore. Yes, friends. Ember said it simply, as if it was the most obvious thing in the universe. You're the first person on this station who didn't stare at my wings like there was something wrong with me. And I'm the first person who didn't stare at your chair like there was something wrong with you. That makes us friends. Ethan felt warmth spread through his chest. I'd like that. Then it's decided. Ember started toward the exit, then paused and looked back. Tomorrow, same time? I'll be here, Ethan promised. Good. Ember smiled again, that dragon smile with the sharp teeth. Friends don't leave each other alone, Ethan's. Then she was gone, her copper scales gleaming as she walked down the corridor and disappeared around the corner. Ethan sat by the window for a long time after she left, staring at the stars but not really seeing them. His mind was full of golden eyes and copper scales and the simple, wonderful word, friends. For the first time since coming to Harmony Point Station, Ethan didn't feel alone. Ember kept her promise. The next day she returned to the observation garden at the same time. And the day after that. And the day after that. Within a week, meeting Ember had become the most important part of Ethan's day. He would wake up excited, counting down the hours until he could glide his hover chair to the garden and find his friend waiting for him. Sometimes she arrived first, sitting by the window and watching the stars. Sometimes Ethan got there early and would see her copper scales gleaming as she walked down the corridor toward him. They talked about everything. Ember told Ethan about life on Dracnoris Prime, about the nest cities carved into mountains, about the hunting flights her people took through crystal canyons. Ethan told her about Earth, about oceans and forests, about cities with millions of humans all living together. They shared their loneliness, Ember missing her homeworld, Ethan missing the idea of belonging somewhere. But mostly they played. It started simply. Ethan was showing Ember another dragon drawing when she asked, In your Earth stories, do dragons and humans always fight each other? Ethan thought about it. In most of the old tales, yes. The knight fights the dragon to rescue someone or protect a village. Ember wrinkled her snout. That sounds sad. Why can't they work together? I don't know, Ethan admitted. I guess nobody wrote those stories. Then we should make our own story, Ember declared. A story where the dragon and the knight are friends. And so, Dragon and Knight was born. The game was simple but endlessly entertaining. Ember was the dragon, and Ethan was the knight in his silver hoverchair, which they pretended was a magical floating carriage. Together they went on imaginary adventures through the observation garden. The potted plants became enchanted forests. The windows looking out at space became portals to other worlds. The bench near the lemon tree became a castle they had to defend. But unlike the old Earth stories, they never fought each other. Instead, they faced challenges together. Look, Ember would say, pointing at a section of the garden. The village is trapped behind a wall of thorns. We must find a way through. Ethan would study the imaginary problem. Your fire could burn through the thorns, but mine could light the way so you can see where to aim. But what about the innocent plants? Ember would counter. We need to be careful. Maybe we can find a path around? They would explore, making up obstacles and solutions as they went. Ethan's chair became a tool for their adventures, Its storage compartments held magical items, its scanner was a truth detector, its hovering ability let them cross dangerous chasms. Ember's small flames became a sacred torch, her claws were perfect for climbing, and her wings, even though they couldn't fly, could create gusts of wind to blow away fog. Their laughter echoed through the observation garden, a sound that had never been heard there before. It was that laughter that drew others. On the 5th day of playing Dragon and Knight, Ethan and Ember were in the middle of rescuing an imaginary town from a flood when they heard a voice. "What are you doing?" They both looked up. Standing at the entrance to the garden was a Centaurian child. Ethan had seen Centaurians before. They looked like giant insects from Earth, with 6 legs, compound eyes, and delicate antennae. This one was small, probably young, with pale green chitin and curious, multifaceted eyes that reflected light like jewels. Ember and Ethan glanced at each other, unsure. They had gotten so used to being alone together that another child felt like an intrusion. "We're playing a game," Ember finally said. The Centaurian crept closer, its 6 legs moving in a fascinating rhythm. "What kind of game?" "Dragon and Knight," Ethan explained. "We're a team. We go on adventures and solve problems together." Can I watch?" the Centaurian asked softly. Ethan recognized that tone. It was the same careful, hopeful voice he used to use when asking if he could join other children. The voice of someone who expected to be rejected but asked anyway. Ember stood up tall, her copper scales gleaming. "You can do better than watch. You can play with us." The Centaurian's antennae perked up with surprise. "Really? Really?" Ethan confirmed. "What's your name?" "Skix. I'm from Centauri 7. I'm Ember and this is Ethan. Ember gestured with her wing. "We need help rescuing a town from a great flood. Your legs could help you climb to high places and rescue people trapped on rooftops." Skix's compound eyes seemed to brighten. "I'm very good at climbing." And just like that, their group of 2 became 3. Skix brought something new to their game. Where Ethan provided strategy and Ember provided courage, Skix provided creativity. The Centaurian child had an incredible imagination, adding details to their adventures that Ethan and Ember had never thought of. Suddenly their imaginary towns had names and histories. The people they rescued had personalities and problems. The challenges became more complex and interesting. "Wait," Skix would say. "If we rescue the town from the flood, where will all the water go? We need to create channels to redirect it safely." Their game evolved, becoming richer and more elaborate. 2 days later they gained another friend. A small Malvec child had been watching them from the corridor for almost an hour before finally working up the courage to approach. The Malvec were covered in thick fur and had large, expressive eyes. This one had brown fur with white patches and wore tiny beads woven into the fur around its neck. "I don't have anyone to play with either," the Malvec said quietly. "Everyone thinks I'm too small." Ember didn't hesitate. "Then you're perfect for our team. Small can be useful. What's your name?" "Pip." "Welcome, Pip," Ethan said with a smile. "We're just about to explore a haunted castle. We need someone who can fit through tight spaces to unlock the doors from inside." Pip's eyes went wide with excitement. "I can do that. I'm the best at squeezing through small spaces." Their circle grew from 3 to 4. The observation garden transformed. What had once been Ethan's place of lonely isolation became a hub of laughter and friendship. The 4 children met there every day, sometimes for hours. They expanded their game, creating an entire world with kingdoms and creatures and ongoing stories that continued from one day to the next. Ethan's hover chair became essential to their adventures. Pip would ride in one of the storage compartments, playing the role of a scout. Skix would sometimes hold onto the back, letting the chair pull them along as they crossed dangerous terrain. Ember walked alongside, her role as the dragon protector of their group taken very seriously. Other children began to notice. Sometimes they would pause at the entrance to the observation garden, watching the strange group play. A paralyzed human, a flightless dragon, an oversized insect and a too small furball. They looked like they shouldn't fit together. But their joy was obvious, their friendship real. One afternoon, a Zenthari child stopped to watch them play. Ethan noticed and tensed, remembering all the times Zenthari children had avoided him. But this one didn't run away. After a few minutes, the Zenthari spoke. "That looks fun. Can anyone join?" Ember turned to Ethan, Skix, and Pip. "What do you think, team? Should we let someone new join our quest?" "What's your name?" Ethan asked the Zenthari child. "Cress." "Well, Cress," Ethan said, feeling confident in a way he never had before, "we're about to face a challenge that requires someone who can create light. Zenthri have crystalline skin that reflects light, right? We could use someone like you. Cress's crystalline body seemed to shimmer with happiness. I would love to help. Their group of 4 became 5. By the end of 2 weeks, 7 children were regular members of the Dragon and Night Adventures. They came from different worlds, different species, different backgrounds. Some were too small for their age. Some were too clumsy. Some were too quiet. Some had parents who worked all the time and felt lonely. Each of them had been isolated in their own way, and each of them found belonging in the observation garden. Ethan's parents noticed the change in him immediately. He came home energized instead of sad. He talked excitedly about his friends during dinner. Grace and Philip would exchange happy, relieved looks as their son described the day's adventures. Ember used her fire to light the dark tunnel, and Skix climbed up to the ceiling to scout ahead, and Pip found a secret passage, and Cress made rainbow light to confuse the guards, and Ethan would talk until he ran out of breath, his face glowing with joy. The observation garden was no longer quiet. It was filled with voices in different languages, laughter in different tones, the sound of friendship that crossed every boundary of species and ability. One day, as they were taking a break from playing, sitting together by the windows and sharing snacks from their various homeworlds, Pip asked a question. Why did none of us have friends before? The group fell quiet, thinking. Finally, Ember spoke. Because everyone else saw what made us different. They saw my small wings, Ethan's chair, Skix's size, your fur, Cress's shyness. They saw the things that made us not fit in. But we don't care about those things, Skix added, Tenny waving thoughtfully. No, Ethan agreed. We see what makes each of us special instead. Ember's bravery, Skix's imagination, Pip's kindness, Cress's gentleness. Those are the things that matter. We see each other, Ember said simply. And that was the truth of it. In a universe of 100 different species, on a station with thousands of beings, these children had found each other not despite their differences but because of them. They understood what it meant to be on the outside. And in understanding that, they had created their own inside, a place where everyone belonged. The observation garden, once a place of isolation, had become a place of belonging. And at the center of it all were a boy who couldn't walk and a dragon who couldn't fly, proving that friendship didn't require you to be like everyone else. It only required you to be yourself. The announcement appeared on every screen throughout Harmony Point Station on a bright Tuesday morning. Ethan was eating breakfast with his parents when the message scrolled across their wall display. Attention all junior residents. The annual Junior Explorers competition will be held in 2 weeks. Teams of 4 to 6 members will compete in a station-wide scavenger hunt. The winning team will receive the honor of activating our new deep space telescope and naming a star. Register your team at the youth center by Friday. Ethan read it twice, feeling a small flutter of interest. It sounded exciting, but he quickly pushed the thought away. Competitions like that were for other kids. Kids who could run and climb and do all the physical things these challenges surely required. But when he met his friends in the observation garden later that morning, Ember had other ideas. We're entering the competition, she announced before Ethan could even say hello. Skix's antennae drooped. The Junior Explorers competition? But that's for the athletic kids. The popular ones. No, Ember said firmly, her golden eyes flashing with determination. It's for all junior residents. That means us. We're a team. We solve problems together every day in our games. This is just a bigger game. Pip's ears flattened against their furry head. But everyone will laugh at us. A dragon who can't fly, a human who can't walk, a centaurian who's too big, a Malvek who's too small. And a Zenthri who's too shy, and a Kelvori who's too clumsy, and a Yernex who's too quiet, Ember finished, gesturing to the other members of their group who had gathered that morning. So what? We're still a team. And I think we can win. Ethan looked at his friend's determined face. You really think we have a chance? I think we have something the other teams don't have, Ember said. We know how to work together. We know how to use everyone's strengths. And we don't give up on each other. Cress, the Zenthri child, spoke up softly. I've never been on a team before. None of us have, Ethan said. Then he smiled, feeling that same flutter of excitement return. Maybe it's time we were. They registered their team the next day. The youth center coordinator, a tall Vexian with blue skin, looked surprised when the group of 7 approached the desk. You want to enter as a team? She asked, her eyes moving from Ethan's hoverchair to Ember's small wings to the various other children who clearly didn't fit the typical competitor profile. Yes, Ember said, standing as tall as her small frame allowed. Is there a problem? No problem, the coordinator said quickly. I just need a team name. The friends looked at each other. Finally, Ethan spoke. Dragon and Knight. Dragon and Knight it is, the coordinator entered it into her system. The competition starts 2 weeks from Saturday. Good luck. As they left the youth center, they passed a group of older kids, athletic-looking children from various species who were clearly athletic and confident. One of them, a large Corvan boy with thick scales and powerful muscles, laughed when he saw them. Look, it's the misfit team, he said loudly. The crippled human and the runt dragon think they can compete. His friends laughed. Ethan felt his face grow hot with embarrassment and anger. But before he could say anything, Ember stepped forward. We'll see who's laughing when we win, she said calmly. The Corvan boy laughed even harder. You can't even fly, little dragon. How are you going to keep up? The same way I always do, Ember replied. With my friends. The 2 weeks before the competition passed quickly. The Dragon and Knight team met every day to prepare. They studied maps of the station, learning shortcuts and hidden passages. They practiced working together, timing their movements, communicating clearly. Skix taught everyone how to think creatively about problems. Pip showed them how to find small spaces and hidden compartments. Cress learned to speak up instead of staying quiet. Ethan coordinated their strategies, his quick mind finding ways to use each member's abilities. The morning of the competition arrived cold and clear. Well, as clear as mornings got on a space station. Ethan woke early, his stomach fluttering with nervous excitement. His parents wished him good luck, and he could see the pride in their eyes. The competition began in the main plaza, where all 12 competing teams gathered. There were teams of strong Corvan children, quick Vexian runners, clever Zenthari problem solvers. The Dragon and Knight team looked small and uncertain by comparison. The station director, a dignified elderly human named Administrator Chin, explained the rules. Teams will receive a list of items to find and challenges to complete throughout the station. You must work together, no team member can be left behind. The first team to return to this plaza with all items and completed challenges wins. You have 4 hours. Begin. Electronic pads activated simultaneously, showing each team their list. Ethan read through theirs quickly, his mind already working. We have to find 6 items hidden in different sections of the station, he said. And complete 3 challenges. Solve a puzzle in the engineering bay, navigate the maintenance tunnels, and decode a message in the observation deck. The other teams are already running toward the engineering bay, Skix observed, watching as several groups sprinted away. Let them, Ethan said. We'll start with the maintenance tunnels. Everyone else will avoid those because they're tight and dark. That gives us an advantage. His strategy proved correct. While other teams crowded into the more accessible areas, the Dragon and Knight team made quick progress through the narrow maintenance tunnels. Pip's small size let them squeeze through passages others couldn't access. Ember's small flames provided light in the darkness. Skix's 6 legs helped them climb over obstacles. Ethan's hoverchair, designed to navigate the station's various terrains, smoothly floated over gaps and rough surfaces. They found their first 2 items, a rare crystal from the geology lab and an ancient tool from the historical archives, faster than Ethan had dared hope. The puzzle in the engineering bay took longer. It was a complex equation involving plasma flow and energy distribution. But working together, with each team member contributing ideas, they solved it in 20 minutes. Cress's knowledge of light refraction helped. Skix's mathematical thinking provided the framework. Ethan coordinated their answers into a coherent solution. By the halfway point, the Dragon and Knight team was in 3rd place. They could hear other teams around the station, sometimes catching glimpses of them racing through corridors. The athletic teams were faster, but the Dragon and Knight team was smarter. They found their 4th and 5th items. A plant sample from the botanical garden and a star chart from the navigation center. Their 6th item was hidden somewhere in the cargo bay, and that's where their real challenge began. The cargo bay was massive, filled with shipping containers stacked 3 stories high. Their item, according to the clue, was hidden at the very top of the tallest stack. How are we supposed to get up there? Pip asked, staring up at the towering containers. The other teams probably have members who can climb, Skix said. We don't. Ethan studied the problem. There were service ladders attached to some containers, but they were far apart. His hoverchair could lift him, but not high enough to reach the top. Then he noticed something, a cargo lift platform designed for moving heavy items. That lift, he said, pointing. If we can activate it, we can ride it to the top. They found the controls, and Skix's multiple limbs proved perfect for pressing several buttons simultaneously while Cress provided light for them to see the faded labels. The platform rumbled to life. All 7 team members crowded onto it as it slowly rose. They found their final item, a small medallion, right where the clue said it would be, tucked into a crevice at the top of the highest container. "We have everything," Pip squeaked excitedly. "Now we just need to decode the final message and get back to the plaza." They made their way to the observation deck, their observation garden, the place where their friendship had begun. The message was written in a combination of 6 different languages, one from each major species on the station. Together, they translated it: "The greatest strength is found in unity." Ethan smiled. The message seemed written specifically for them. They had one more task left, to return to the main plaza. They were currently in 2nd place, right behind the Corvin team that had mocked them. If they could just get back quickly enough, they might actually win. Ethan's hoverchair glided smoothly as they raced through the corridors. His friends ran alongside him, their footsteps echoing in rhythm. They were actually going to do this. They were actually going to prove that being different didn't mean being less. They were halfway to the plaza when disaster struck. Ethan's hoverchair suddenly lurched sideways. A horrible grinding sound came from its base. The smooth glide became a jerky, unstable wobble. Warning lights flashed on the control panel. "Ethan, what's wrong?" Ember asked, seeing him struggle with the controls. "I don't know," Ethan said, his heart sinking. "Something's broken. The hover mechanism, it's failing." The chair dropped lower, losing altitude. The humming sound that had always been there turned into a sick wheeze. Within seconds, the chair settled onto the floor completely, its hovering ability gone. Ethan tried the controls, but nothing worked. The chair had become nothing more than a heavy, wheeled seat that couldn't move on its own. His friends gathered around him, their expressions stricken. "Can we fix it?" Skix asked. Ethan checked the diagnostics. "Not without tools and time we don't have. The competition ends in 15 minutes. They could hear footsteps in nearby corridors, other teams racing toward the finish. The Corvin team's loud voices echoed from somewhere close by. "We're done," Pip said softly. "We can't make it back in time now." Ethan felt tears burning in his eyes. They had been so close. They had proven they could compete, could use their unique abilities to succeed. And now, because his chair had failed, because his broken body required a machine that had broken down, they would lose. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "This is my fault. You should go on without me. You can still finish." "No," Ember said firmly. Ethan looked up at her through blurred vision. "But we're a team," Ember said, her golden eyes fierce. "The rules say no team member gets left behind. That means you're coming with us." "But how?" "I can't." Ember knelt down in front of his chair, turning her back to him. "You can ride on me." "What?" "No, I can't." "Yes, you can." Ember looked over her shoulder at him. "You're my friend Ethan. That makes you family. And family carries each other when someone can't go on alone." Around them, their other friends nodded. They moved quickly, helping Ethan transfer from his useless chair onto Ember's back. He wrapped his arms around her neck and she stood slowly, adjusting to his weight. "Everyone ready?" she asked. "Ready," the team answered together. And then, with a paralyzed boy on her back and their friends running alongside them, a small dragon who had never been able to fly began to run. Ember ran faster than she had ever run in her life. Ethan clung to her back, his arms wrapped around her neck, his useless legs hanging down her sides. The weight was significant. Human children were heavier than young Draknori, but Ember didn't slow down. Her clawed feet pounded against the metal floor of the corridor, her copper scales gleaming under the station lights. Her small wings, useless for flight, pressed tight against her back to keep them out of the way. Behind them, their friends ran in formation. Skix's 6 legs carried the Centaurian with surprising speed. Pip's small Malvec body bounced with each stride, determination written on the furry face. Cress, the shy Zenthari, ran with crystalline skin flashing rainbow colors in the light. The others kept pace, none of them willing to fall behind. They could hear the Corvin team somewhere nearby, their heavy footsteps echoing through the station. The big, athletic children who had laughed at them were close. Maybe ahead, maybe behind. There was no way to tell. 2 minutes left. Skix called out, reading the time on a wall display as they passed. Ember pushed harder. Her muscles burned. Her breath came in hot gasps. But she didn't stop. On her back, Ethan held on tight, his face pressed against her scales. "You can do it, Ember," he whispered. "I believe in you." Those words gave her strength she didn't know she had. Her father had always worried she would never be a proper warrior because she couldn't fly. Her mother had fretted that her small size meant weakness. But here now, carrying her friend toward victory, Ember felt stronger than any dragon who had ever taken to the skies. They burst into a main corridor and suddenly they weren't alone anymore. Station residents lined the halls, watching the final moments of the competition. Adult Drachnori, tall Vexians, families of various species. All of them turned to stare as Ember raced past with a human child on her back. And among the crowd, Ember saw her parents. Commander Rinash stood tall and imposing, his dark bronze scales marking him as a senior warrior. Beside him, Scylla, Ember's mother, watched with wide golden eyes. Their expressions showed shock, confusion, and something else Ember couldn't quite read. But there was no time to think about it. The plaza was just ahead. They rounded the final corner and saw the finish area. Administrator Chin stood by the platform, checking her timepiece. 2 teams had already finished. The Corvin team was there, looking smug, and another group of Vexian children stood catching their breath. The competition timer showed 45 seconds remaining. Go! Ethan shouted. Go, go, go! Ember's legs pumped. Her friends surged forward around her. The plaza seemed impossibly far away, then suddenly they were there, crossing the finish line in a scrambling, gasping group. Dragon and Knight team complete. Administrator Chin announced. 3rd place with 30 seconds to spare. Ember's legs gave out. She collapsed gently to her knees, breathing so hard she thought her lungs might burst. Ethan slid off her back, and their friends gathered around them, all of them exhausted and sweating and laughing with relief. We did it, Pip squeaked. We actually did it. 3rd place isn't first, Skix observed, but the Centaurian sounded happy anyway. Wait, Administrator Chin said, checking her tablet. I need to verify the completions. The plaza fell quiet as she reviewed each team's results. The Corvin team stood confidently, clearly expecting to win. The Vexian team looked hopeful. The Dragon and Knight team just tried to catch their breath. The Corvin team completed 5 of 6 item retrievals, Chin announced. They're missing the cargo bay medallion. The Corvin team's leader sputtered. But we thought. Disqualified for incomplete objectives, Chin continued. The Vexian team successfully gathered all items but failed to properly decode the final message. The translation was incorrect. Hope flickered in Ethan's chest. Chin looked up with a smile. The Dragon and Knight team completed all objectives correctly, gathered all items and solved all puzzles. Despite placing 3rd in time, they are the only team to fully complete the competition. She paused for effect. Dragon and Knight team wins. The plaza erupted in cheers. Ethan's parents pushed through the crowd, Grace crying happy tears as she hugged her son. Philip clapped Ember on the shoulder with genuine gratitude. The other team members were swarmed by proud family members. But Ember's attention was on her parents, who approached slowly through the crowd. Commander Rinash was a formidable figure, nearly 8 feet tall with battle scars marking his dark scales. His wings, massive and powerful, were partially extended, a sign of strong emotion in Drachnori culture. His golden eyes, so like Ember's, were fixed on his daughter. Ember stood up straighter, suddenly nervous. She had never done anything like this before. Carrying another being was an honor reserved for family, for bonded kin. Her father might be angry that she had extended that honor to a human, to someone outside their species. The crowd seemed to sense the tension. Conversations quieted. Even Administrator Chin paused in her announcements. Commander Rinash stopped in front of Ember. For a long moment he said nothing, just looked at his small daughter with her copper scales and 2 small wings. Then his gaze shifted to Ethan, still sitting on the ground near his broken hoverchair. Then, slowly and deliberately, Commander Rinash did something that made the entire Drachnori community in the plaza gasp. He bowed. It wasn't a small nod of acknowledgement. It was a full formal bow, the kind Drachnori warriors gave only to those they considered equals in honor. His wings spread fully, his head lowered, his tail curved in the traditional gesture of deepest respect. Ethan Cole, the commander's voice rumbled through the plaza. You have shown my daughter what true courage means. Ethan stared up at the massive Drachnori warrior, confused. I don't understand. Ember's the one who carried me. She's the brave one. No, Rinash straightened, his eyes warm. You trusted someone else to carry you when your machine failed. You did not give up. You did not quit. You allowed your friends to help you, which requires more courage than most warriors ever find. He paused. And in doing so, you showed my daughter her own strength. Scylla, Ember's mother, stepped forward. Her voice was gentler but just as powerful. We worried that Ember was weak because she could not fly. We thought her small wings meant a small spirit. She looked at her daughter with glistening eyes. We were wrong. Her strength was always there. It just needed the right reason to shine. Ember felt warmth spread through her chest. Mother. You carried your friend when he could not move himself, Scylla continued. You ran faster than I have ever seen you run. You refused to leave anyone behind. She touched Ember's small wing gently. Wings are not what make a Draknori strong. The heart is what makes us strong. And your heart, my daughter, is the strongest I have ever known. Tears rolled down Ember's scaled cheeks. She had spent so long thinking she was a disappointment, that her inability to fly made her less than other Draknori. But her parents' words, spoken in front of the entire community, told her something different. Administrator Chen stepped forward, breaking the emotional moment with professional efficiency. As winners of the Junior Explorers competition, the Dragon and Knight team has earned the right to activate our new deep space telescope and name a star. She gestured to a large control panel that had been set up on the platform. Please come forward. Ethan's friends helped him reach the platform, carrying him since his chair was broken. Maintenance workers promised to repair it immediately, but for now, Skix and Pip supported him between them. The entire team gathered around the control panel with Ethan and Ember at the center. The telescope controls were complex, covered in buttons and screens. A technician showed them which sequence to press to activate the device and begin scanning for previously undiscovered stars. Ready? Ethan asked Ember. Together, Ember replied. They pressed the activation button simultaneously. The large view screen above the platform flickered to life, showing the deep space view from the telescope. It scanned through sectors, moving past known star systems, searching the uncharted regions of space. Then it found something. There, the technician said, highlighting the discovery. A binary star system. 2 stars orbiting each other, previously uncharted. On the screen, 2 stars danced around each other in an eternal cosmic ballet. One burned bright white, the other a warm copper color. They spun together, bound by gravity, neither able to exist without the other. It's beautiful, Ember breathed. It's perfect, Ethan agreed. Administrator Chen smiled. What will you name it? Ethan and Ember looked at each other. They didn't need to discuss it. They both knew. Ember spoke first. We name it Valenshar. In the Draknori language, Ethan explained to the crowd, it means the eternal bond. Valenshar, Chen repeated, entering it into the star registry. A beautiful name for a beautiful discovery. She turned to address the crowd. Let it be recorded that on this day the Dragon and Knight team discovered and named the binary star system Valenshar, symbolizing the bonds of friendship that transcend all differences. The crowd erupted in applause again. But Ember barely heard it. She was looking at the stars on the screen. One bright white like a human, one copper like a Draknori, spinning together through the cosmos. Commander Rinash approached Ethan and his parents. Grace and Philip Cole, he said formally, I request permission to hold a bonding ceremony. Grace blinked in surprise. A bonding ceremony? It is a Draknori tradition, Scylla explained. When 2 individuals prove they are bonded in spirit, we formally recognize that bond. It makes them family regardless of blood or species. She looked at Ethan warmly. Your son has bonded with our daughter. We wish to honor that. Philip looked at Ethan, who nodded eagerly. We would be honored, Philip said. The ceremony will be held tomorrow evening, Rinash declared. All are invited to witness. As the crowd began to disperse, chattering excitedly about the competition and the upcoming ceremony, Ethan's friends gathered around him one more time. We won, Pip said, still sounding amazed. We did more than win, Skix corrected. We proved something. What did we prove? Cress asked quietly. Ethan looked at each of his friends, the 2 big Centaurian, the 2 small Malvek, the 2 shy Zenthri, and all the others who had been told they were somehow not enough. Then he looked at Ember, the dragon who couldn't fly but who had carried him when he couldn't move. We proved that being different isn't weakness, Ethan said. It's what makes us strong. Ember smiled, her golden eyes bright. Together we can do anything. And looking at their reflection in the view screen, with the binary stars spinning behind them, Ethan knew it was true. They were different species, different abilities, different in every way that should have kept them apart. But they were family now. And nothing in the universe was stronger than that. The bonding ceremony took place the following evening in the main ceremonial hall of Harmony Point Station. The large room was filled with beings from every species on the station. Draknori elders stood in their formal armor, wings spread in traditional display. Human families sat in rows of chairs, dressed in their finest clothes. Zenthari, Malvek, Centaurian, Vexian, and dozens of other species filled every available space. At the center of the hall, on a raised platform, stood Ethan and Ember. Ethan wore a formal suit his mother had kept stored for special occasions. His repaired hoverchair gleamed, freshly polished. Beside him, Ember's copper scales had been buffed until they shone like metal. She wore ceremonial bands around her horns and wings, traditional Draknori decorations reserved for important occasions. Commander Rinash stood before them, his voice carrying through the hall. In the tradition of our people, we recognize bonds that transcend blood. When two souls prove they are connected by loyalty, courage, and love, we make that connection official. He placed one clawed hand on Ember's head, then one on Ethan's. Ethan Cole, human child of Earth, I name you wing brother to Ember of the Flamewing clan. From this day forward, you are family. Scylla stepped forward, holding a small copper band. She placed it on Ethan's wrist. This band marks you as kin to Draknori. You will always have a home among our people. Grace came forward with a silver chain, which she gently placed around Ember's neck. And this marks you as part of our family, Ember. You will always be welcome in our home. The hall erupted in applause and ceremonial roars from the Draknori. Ethan felt tears on his cheeks but didn't care. Ember's eyes shimmered with emotion. They had been friends for such a short time, but it felt like they had known each other forever. After the ceremony, there was a celebration with food from 100 different worlds. Ethan and Ember sat together, surrounded by their friends from the Dragon and Knight team, watching the diverse crowd mingle and celebrate. Things are different now, Skix observed, antennae waving thoughtfully. Look. Ethan followed the Centaurian's gaze. Throughout the hall, children from different species were playing together. A Corvan child, not from the team that had mocked them but a younger one, was showing a human girl how to balance on her tail. Zenthari and Malvek children were trading toys. Even some of the older kids who had ignored the misfits before were now asking questions about the competition and the Dragon and Knight game. Word has spread, Pip said quietly. About what we did. About our team. Other kids are talking about starting their own mixed species groups, Cress added, speaking with more confidence than before. They want to play Dragon and Knight too. Ember looked at Ethan. We started something, didn't we? I think we did, Ethan replied. Over the next few weeks, the change became even more obvious. The observation garden, once Ethan's lonely refuge, became the most popular gathering place for children on the station. Every afternoon, dozens of kids from various species would meet there to play. The Dragon and Knight game evolved and expanded, with new children adding their own ideas and traditions. The youth center coordinator approached Ethan's parents one day with a request. We want to create an official program based on what your son and his friends started. Mixed species play groups, cooperative games, activities that celebrate differences instead of highlighting them. Would Ethan be willing to help us design it? Of course, Ethan said yes. He and Ember became unofficial ambassadors for the new program. They taught other children the games they had invented. They showed them how to work together, how to see strength in differences, how to help each other instead of competing against each other. Station Director Chin even commissioned a mural for the observation garden. It showed 7 figures, a human in a hoverchair, a small dragon, a centaurian, a Malvek, a Zenthari, and 2 others, standing together beneath a starfield. At the center of the mural was the binary star system Valenshar, glowing bright. 6 months after the competition, Ethan sat in the observation garden on a quiet morning. His hoverchair was parked by his favorite window, and he was working on a new drawing. But this time he wasn't alone. Ember sat beside him as always. But around them, spread throughout the garden, were at least 30 other children. Some were playing Dragon and Knight. Others were reading together. A group in the corner was building something with blocks, each child contributing pieces from their own cultural toys. Human children played with Draknori. Zenthari helped Malvek. Vexians and Corvan worked side by side. The observation garden was no longer a place of isolation. It had become the heart of the station's youth community. A small voice interrupted Ethan's thoughts. Excuse me? He looked down to see a tiny human girl, maybe 5 years old, looking up at him with shy eyes. She had leg braces, Ethan noticed, a different kind of mobility issue than his, but still something that made her different. Hi, Ethan said gently. What's your name? Lily, the girl whispered. I just moved to the station. I don't have any friends yet. Ethan smiled. He knew exactly how that felt. Well, Lily, you're in the right place. This garden is where friends are made. Ember leaned down, her golden eyes warm. Would you like to hear a story? Lily nodded eagerly. Within moments, other children began gathering around. It had become a tradition. When Ethan and Ember told stories, everyone stopped to listen. They settled onto the floor, a multicolored group of different shapes and sizes and species, all looking up expectantly. "What story should we tell today?" Ember asked Ethan. Ethan thought for a moment. Then he smiled. "How about the true one? The one about how all of this started?" "The beginning," Ember agreed. "That's a good place to start." Ethan looked at the gathered children, at their eager faces, their different features, their unique bodies. He saw himself in many of them. The ones who looked different, who felt alone, who thought they would never belong. "Once upon a time," Ethan began, his voice carrying through the quiet garden, "there was a boy who couldn't walk. And a dragon who couldn't fly," Ember continued, picking up the rhythm they had developed over many tellings. "The boy was lonely," Ethan said. "No one wanted to play with him because he was different. He spent his days alone, drawing pictures and wishing for a friend. The dragon was lonely too," Ember added. "Her wings were too small. The other dragons could soar through the sky, but she couldn't. Everyone thought she was weak." The children listened, completely absorbed. "One day the dragon found the boy sitting alone in a garden very much like this one," Ethan continued. "She could have walked away like everyone else. But she didn't. She sat down beside him," Ember said. "And she told him the truth, that she was different too. That she understood what it was like to be unable to do what everyone else could do. And in that moment," Ethan said softly, "they became friends. They invented a game where they worked together instead of fighting," Ember continued. "They found other lonely children and invited them to play. They discovered that being different wasn't a weakness, it was what made them special." Ethan looked at Ember and she looked back at him. They had told this story many times, but it never got old. Because it was true. Because it had changed everything. When a great challenge came, Ethan said, everyone thought the boy and the dragon would fail. But they didn't. Because they had something the others didn't have. They had each other, Ember finished. They had friends who saw their strengths instead of their weaknesses. They had people who believed in them. The dragon carried the boy when he couldn't move, Ethan said. And the boy gave the dragon courage when she felt weak. Together, Ember said, her voice filled with emotion, they won. Together, Ethan echoed, they discovered a star. And they named it the Eternal Bond, Ember said. Because their friendship would last forever. The children were silent for a moment, absorbing the story. Then little Lily raised her hand. Is it really true? She asked. All of it. Ethan and Ember smiled at each other. Every word, Ethan promised. The garden is still here, Ember gestured around them. The star is still out there, spinning through space. And we're still friends. Will I find friends too? Lily asked, her voice small and hopeful. Ethan reached out and gently touched her shoulder. You already have, Lily. Everyone in this garden is your friend now. Because that's what this place is for, bringing together people who feel alone and showing them they never have to be alone again. An older Corvan child, one of the ones who had initially mocked the dragon and night team, spoke up. I used to think being strong meant being the biggest or the fastest. But Ethan and Ember taught us that real strength is helping each other. Now I have friends I never would have had before. A Zenthari child added, I was too shy to talk to anyone. But here everyone listens. Everyone cares. More children shared their stories. How the observation garden had changed their lives. How the dragon and night game had taught them to value differences. How Ethan and Ember's friendship had shown them what was possible. As the sun cycle shifted and artificial evening began on the station, the children slowly dispersed to return to their families. But they would be back tomorrow. They always came back. Ethan and Ember remained in the garden as the lights dimmed to simulate nighttime. The stars outside the windows shone brilliantly, and somewhere among them, too far to see with the naked eye but visible through the telescope, was Valenshar, their star, the eternal bond. Did you ever imagine this? Ember asked quietly. When you were sitting here alone all those months ago, did you think it would lead to all of this? Ethan thought back to that lonely boy who had spent his days drawing dragons and wishing for a friend. No, he admitted. I just wanted one person who wouldn't look away. One person who would sit with me. And instead you got dozens, Ember said with a smile. An entire community. We got dozens, Ethan corrected. We did this together. Ember's golden eyes reflected the starlight. Together, she agreed. The way it should always be. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars drift past. The observation garden was quiet now, but it was a peaceful quiet, not a lonely one. The echoes of laughter and friendship still seemed to hang in the air. Tomorrow the children would return. They would play dragon and knight, they would tell stories, they would learn that differences made them stronger rather than weaker. And at the center of it all would be a boy who couldn't walk and a dragon who couldn't fly. Two friends who had reached for the stars and found something even more precious. They had found each other. They had found belonging. They had found home. And in doing so, they had shown everyone else that the universe was big enough for all of them, together. High above, visible through the telescope if anyone cared to look, Valenshar spun through the cosmos. Two stars bound together, different but inseparable, lighting up the darkness with their eternal dance. Just like a boy and a dragon who had become family. Just like friendship that would last forever.